Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Undergraduate webinar series, an interactive online platform connecting high school students to the Ashoka community. Thank you for joining us for today's Q&A with the admissions team. I am Shaurya Chima and I work with the Office of Outreach at Ashoka University. We have with us today Kopal Agarwal and Janvi Datta from the Office of Admissions at Ashoka. Please feel free to post any questions that you may have in the Q&A box, and we'll be sure to address them after their session. Before we get started, I would like to inform our audience that round 2 admissions to Ashoka's undergraduate program are open. The deadline for round 2 is the 17th of January. You don't have to wait for your 12 board marks to apply, and you can get a confirmed offer of admission and financial aid without your 12 board marks as early as March 2022, much before your final board exams end. So without any further ado and delay, let's get started. Over to you, Janvi and Kopal.
Hi, we're very happy to answer your questions today. And we know that there might be some uncertainty, some questions as you fill out your applications to submit them for this round. So we hope to answer all your questions to the best of our abilities. And Happy New Year, although we might be a little late in wishing that.
Yeah, same as Kopal, really. We look forward to speaking with you over the next hour and answering any questions you might have. I'm Janvi, and yeah, I think we should probably just get started.
All right. Sorry, just give me a second. I think my laptop is hanging a bit.
Yeah, sure, no worries. If you'd like, there are a couple of questions we've gotten so far. If maybe Kopal, you and I would like to start out with those. There are already quite a few questions coming into the box. The first question is, are all applicants eligible for the aptitude assessment, or only shortlisted applicants, are they the ones that are eligible? Kopal, would you like to take this question?
Yeah, sure, Janvi. So I think before I start answering that question, I'll just talk about the Ashoka aptitude assessment a little bit. So it's important for you, for whoever wants to submit their application, to appear for the Ashoka aptitude assessment, because it is a part of your application. And the assessments for round 2 will happen on the 23rd of this month. The assessments happen on one day for everybody who appears within a particular round. And we understand that people may have some other engagements that they have to attend to, so which is why the assessment window is a fairly large window for you. So you can log in at 10 and you can do the assessments between 10 to 4:30. 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. is when you can do the Ashoka aptitude assessment. The assessment has 2 tests. One is an on-the-spot essay, which is for 30 minutes typically, and the other one is the thinking skills assessment, which is a test given to us by Cambridge. So this is for 90 minutes. So typically your assessments will be for 120 minutes with a 5-minute break in between. So, you can just refresh yourself. So this is how the assessment works, and the assessment has been designed so you can take it without any preparation. So it's designed to be taken with very minimal preparation at your end. We already have uploaded some sample papers on the website. I think you can also find them in the chat link below. So you can look at what sort of questions and the sort of answers that you can expect to write for the on-the-spot essays and also the thinking skills assessment. So this is how the assessment works. And to briefly answer the question, it is important for you to do the assessments in order for you to complete your application.
All right. Okay. I think I'm back. Sorry, you were saying something, Kopal?
No, I'm done. We can move.
All right. So the next question that we have is, how does the financial aid process work?
Okay, I'll take that. So for everyone that's concerned here, Ashoka's admissions process is entirely merit-based, but our financial aid process is entirely need-based. I think that really is the foundation that's important for everyone to understand. and to sort of draw the distinction between these two things. In fact, to drive this point home even further, we've sort of separated the processes in the last few years. There are completely different teams that sort of deal with the admissions process as well as the financial aid process. The way that it works from the perspective of an applicant would be that once you sort of apply and go through all the rounds of admission, by rounds, I don't mean the different rounds in the year, I mean the different components that are a part of your holistic evaluation, your aptitude assessment, your on the spot essay, presumably your interview if you make it to that phase. And then if you do receive an offer of admission from us, there is a window after that period in which you are required to apply for financial aid should you wish to. Once you go through that process, which is between the financial aid team and the applicant, which requires you to submit some documentation for them to make a decision about, say, how much financial aid you're likely to receive. That's how the process goes forward. Then you're sort of granted that amount, and that's applicable for your time at Ashoka. So yeah, largely off the bat, that is how it works. It's completely separate from your process of admission. Once you've received the offer, this process sort of kicks off and sort of happens parallelly.
All right. So only after you receive an offer of admission can you actually apply or start working on your financial aid. Awesome.
That's correct. Yeah.
All right. Cool. Okay. Moving on. Is math mandatory for economics at Ashoka University?
I'll take that question, Shaurya. So mathematics is mandatory for economics at Ashoka. In addition to economics, there are a couple of other disciplines that require you to have studied mathematics. So these disciplines are economics, as we just talked about, mathematics, computer science, and physics. And it's important for you to study mathematics in order to major and minor in all these disciplines that we've spoken about. And the other thing is that this year CBSE has added another mathematics component that we now accept, which is applied maths. So it's important that CBSE students know that, and people who've done applied mathematics are eligible to do these majors. And there are a few departments at Ashoka that do make an exception to the rule of mathematics being a required component. So I would urge you all to look at the website, because you can find all the detailed, sub details within these discipline policies to know if you qualify for the exception. But economics department does not make any exceptions to the mathematics rule. So it's important that you study economics with mathematics.
All right. Thank you. Just to follow up on that, Kopal, even for a minor, economics minor, is math still mandatory?
Yes, mathematics is required for both majors and minors.
All right, thank you. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Can our essay responses in the application be creative?
I'll take that question actually. I think this might be a good time to just talk about the essay section in general. So just bear with me, because I'm guessing that there might be applicants that have questions in and around this. So if you spend a little bit of time with the application form, and specifically the essay section, you'll see that the questions are very pointed. I mean, if you spend a little bit of time, sort of coming up with your responses, and we would urge you to do that, we are actually trying to, as a part of our holistic admissions process, trying to assess and understand different parts of who you are as a part of this section. So we would actually urge you not at all to have creative responses, just given the nature of the questions. For example, the first one that talks about an idea, concept, or theory that you find interesting is very clearly trying to see for us what are things that you have sort of been interested in, things that you sort of made the effort to learn more about. There isn't much scope in this sort of a question for it to be creative, because then we wouldn't really be able to get to know you, which is really the aim of this entire application form and the larger process as well. The second question, which asks about a personal experience, also is us trying to get to know another aspect of your life and sort of getting a glimpse into it before we maybe eventually get to have a conversation with you, should you be shortlisted. Even the last question, I suppose that's the only question that is sort of creative in its own right, which sort of asks you about your favorite word, or whether there's a way in which it's impacted you and why that is so. In terms of creativity, I guess it would just get you to think about something you might not have had to think about, but the response would also, I think, be very true to who you are. We would tell you to answer all of these questions honestly and factually. I think that is really the basis of these questions, and to stay away from anything creative, because that would not take us further away from you instead of sort of giving us a window into getting to know you better.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. So let's move on to the next question, which is I'm not a very good writer, but there is a lot more to me than that. Uh, in what way will my chances of getting in be affected?
I think I'll take this as well. And Gopal, if you'd like to add anything, I'd sort of see it as a bit of an extension of the last question, actually. So the application form is honestly designed just like the admissions process to be holistic, like we said. I think the focus is really not on the way in which you write, but really what it is that you write about. And I do think the crux to sort of getting through to us when you say that there's more to you than writing, which of course we understand as people who've been to university and are a part of the admissions process, we would, I mean, not at all. I don't think it's about, writing eloquently or sort of writing, with a certain kind of advancement, but I think largely about us sort of getting to know an honest, sort of getting an honest insight into who you really are. So no, not at all. And also, if you do look at the application form as well as the other components, it does capture other aspects of who you are, other skills, and does require you to apply yourself in other ways. So I mean, essentially, it would. I mean, there are very many other avenues for you to sort of step up and you know convey that to us, I would say.
Right. Anything you would like to add, Kopal, to that?
No, I think Janvi has covered it very well, so we can move on from this.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to take up the next couple of questions, if you all don't mind, and then I'm going to throw some questions back at you. So I have a question over here. What should I do if my college refuses to give predicted scores? So I'm guessing your school refuses to give predicted scores. You can self-predict your grades. That is not a problem at all. So please do not think of that as a hindrance in your application process. All right. So another question we have is, do you provide distance education too? Answer for that is no. We are a residential program. We have a residential UG program. So ideally, you should be at the campus and studying in the campus itself. Another question we have is, okay, I think, I think I'm going to ask you all a couple of questions, and I'll wait for a few more questions for me. All right, the next question we have for the admissions team is, if I have a position of leadership, however, I will receive my certificates only post prelims, which is after the submission deadline to this round. Then what should I do? Yeah.
Okay, I'll take that question. So I think I'll also take this time to talk about the section which asks students to write about their extracurricular activities, their non-academic engagements and interests. So, it's a mandatory section, and 3 activities have to be filled out for sure. And there is an extension up to 5 activities that students can fill out. So it is in this section that students can also upload certificates and other documents that they have to verify the activities, and also, give us a good sense of the sort of engagement they've done with their interest areas. So for this particular question, where a person has done a position of leadership in their school, we understand that schools have their own timelines to work with, and that's completely fine. If you do not have a certificate from your school, what you can also do is maybe reach out to your school and ask them to issue on a school letterhead a letter attesting to the fact that you've done a particular position that you've mentioned in your application. And this is applicable not only for leadership positions, but also competitions that you may have attended, or any other activity that you've done as a part of your school, or any activity where you've represented your school. But in this section, students will also notice that in addition to activities that they've done in their school, they can also write activities that they've done independently. And there are various levels at which an activity could have been pursued. It could have been practice personal, it could have been a district level activity. So, students can see what best suits the activity and the level of engagement they've had with that activity and write about that. And in this section, they'll also see that there is a description text box. So we urge students to also fill that out as well and as clearly as they can, because often certificates don't really tell us about what you learned in an activity. They will just verify that you did an activity, but we wouldn't know what sort of engagement and what you learned. So I think that's my 2 cents on how to go about this.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Kopal. All right. Let's move on to the next question, which is, what is the admissions office looking for in the essays? Is it better for them to be more unique or safer? I know you've already answered regarding the essays, but if you can just emphasize on this a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's an interesting question, and I think it falls into the ambit of creativity when you say unique or safer, because honestly, we are looking for just honest responses. I think if there is really anything that stuck out for you, you wanted to know more about it. What did you do to learn more about it? I mean, I would say it's almost sort of like stating what you've done with an idea or a concept that you're interested in, or writing about a very personal experience. I think in this regard, there's no room for being unique or safe, actually. So I would, as Shaurya mentioned, emphasize that, just sit down, maybe jot down your points, think of what comes to your mind when you look at these questions. Maybe look back at, an experience you've had, or, a topic you've engaged with, a word you've come across, things like that, and just sort of, I would say, communicate it in the way that would let us know you best. That's it.
I've always found, Janvi, that these essay questions can be, introspective. Like you really have to kind of ask yourself these questions, and it takes a while, but that's the process, right? So there is no room for being unique as such, but you have to be introspective. Am I right in that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would totally agree with that. And I think which is why we also tell students to sort of spend their time with their application form, sort of deciding what it is that you'd like to write about. If you're trying to convey these things, because I don't necessarily think that these are responses that just sort of, glare back at you. So, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Okay. So the next question we have is, can we mention a book that was a part of our school reading syllabus, basically? But I really liked the book.
Okay, so I will take this question. I'm assuming that whoever wants to mention this book wants to mention it in the section where we ask about people's favorite books and books that have had an impact on them. So ideally, we also want to see what sort of reading you've done outside of your curriculum, because we are very familiar with the kinds of texts that are prescribed for ISC, CBSC, international boards. So ideally, we would like to see, your other insights, the other things that have really interested you. But that being said, if a text has really had some sort of an impact on you, which is a part of your curriculum, and you want to highlight that, please by all means do write about it. But you'll see that there are 5 books that you can write about. So if there is a book from your curriculum that you want to write about, sure, please go ahead. But also you can use the other 4 books to write about books that aren't in your curriculum but are significant for you.
All right. Just a follow-up question, Kopal, from my side. If there is a person or an applicant who's not really an avid reader, do they need to feel pressurized to read a book and then write about that book?
So I think I will answer this question in 2 ways. Number one, no, please do not feel pressurized that you have to write about it, that you have to first read a book and then write about it. But secondly, I would also like to qualify the fact that Ashoka is a very, very reading intensive program. So all the students who do come to Ashoka have to make their peace with the fact that they will have to read copiously before their classes, not just tests, but also their classes, because classes are based on the discussions that you've had on your readings. So students who are not into reading should, I think, start reading. Maybe not for your application specifically, but in general, for your life at Ashoka, I think it will hold you in good stead if you do start reading.
All right. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys one more question, and then I'm going to take a few questions myself. The next question we have for the admissions team is, the form asks for our 11th grade marks. How do we insert them if they weren't conducted and were on the basis of assignments?
Okay, so I will take that question. So we know that there has been a lot of uncertainty in schools about examinations, and it's completely fine if you don't have your 11th grade marks. So if your school has issued any sort of grades for your class 11th, you can upload that in the class 11th section. If there was nothing and you have just been promoted to the next class, that's also fine. You will see in your application there are various text boxes where you can communicate with whoever reads your application. So in that section, you can write about the fact that your 11th grade marks, 11th grade exams weren't conducted, and you were promoted based on whatever evaluation method was followed in your school. So you can either do that in the academic section, you will see that there is a small text box, or also at the end of the application, there is a support section where you can state these details.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for that. Okay, I'm going to take the next couple of questions and then I'll come back to both of you. So we have a question over here. Is sending SAT scores via College Board mandatory? The answer for that is no. It's not mandatory to send your scores via just College Board. Applicants applying to Ashoka with SAT or ACT scores can send us their official transcripts either through College Board or as an attachment in itself in the application. So, you have both these options. The next question we have is our probability of admissions affected if we apply in a later round, like in round 3 instead of round 2? The short answer for that is no. A quality app will always be picked up by us. We only look at the quality. But from my side, I would say that do look at round 2 as a very good window to apply in. It's much before you even start preparing for your boards. It's way before than any uncertainty that may happen. You are certain about certain dates, so do apply in the second round and increase your chances to get in. We don't need your final board results to give you a confirmed offer or a financial aid offer. But yeah, a quality application will be picked up in any round. The next question I'm going to take is, I'm confused regarding the topic of Haryana domicile. My Haryana domicile is still in the making. Is there a way for me to submit the domicile even after the application deadline? So the short answer for this is that when you apply for a domicile, even if you don't have a domicile right now, when you apply for it online, you get a receipt for applying the domicile. So you can attach the receipt in your application and give us the domicile certificate at a later stage, but you will have to attach the receipt that you have applied for the domicile. We cannot accept identifications or birth certificates stating where you are from. We would need the actual domicile receipt, at least in your application. And when your domicile comes at a later stage, you can always share that with us at a later stage. All right, so back to the admissions team now. The next question for you lot is, what makes for a well-rounded application? I think this is a question that will take some sort of thinking, but yeah, what makes for a well-rounded application?
Sure. I think I'll attempt it, and maybe Gopal can step in if there's anything she'd like to add. So honestly, I would say that the process is sort of designed to bring out this aspect of a student. I think that as a potential applicant who might be looking at this form, you're sort of forced to think about yourself in many different ways, things that you might not have had to present yourself as, which will sort of bring forth the fact that there are many other aspects to your experience in school, which is probably the last significant experience before you go to university. I would say that, and this is a slightly personal answer more than anything. I would say that it would be having done things that sort of get you to steer away from your curriculum a little bit, that I think contribute to being holistic. Of course, there's stuff that you're expected to do at school, and you have dealt with it in whatever way you want to, but are there things that you sort of been interested in and engage with on the side? I mean, I think the application does a good job of trying to ask to sort of capture all these different aspects, whether it's through the non-academic engagement section or through things you might have read, or the non-academic engagement section also gives you a lot of room to sort of fill out all sorts of different kinds of activities. I think there's so much scope, and funnily enough, I think in the last 2 years with COVID, there's been a very different range of activities that I think students have sort of been engaging with, and honestly adults too. So I think that it would really be for us to get to know that there are things that sort of make you tick, something that you're particularly interested in. Even if there's one thing that you can sort of talk about that you have maybe gone out of your way to learn a little bit more about or engage with, whether it's an instrument or a song or like a piece of writing, or you read a book and read about a concept in the book and you thought it was interesting, so you read about it more. I would say that there's no formula for this at all. I think it would just be for us to. I think it's almost, if I had to answer this question in reverse, I would also look at Ashoka's pedagogy, which is that it is an interdisciplinary institution. The point of an education like this is to sort of get you to learn and think in different ways, to understand linkages between different disciplines and understand that real life is actually sort of exists at the cusp of these things and not strictly in particular domains. So I would say that a holistic student would be able to recognize that and sort of retrofit that to their own lives in some way, whether you've thought about it like that or not. But it might be a good way to approach your application form, to sort of go and spend some time with the website, see what are the different things that are happening at university, what the university really likes to focus on, and sort of see what you've done to engage in different ways.
Absolutely. I could not agree more with that myself. All right. So the next question that we have is the admission test compulsory? And what is the weightage given to the same for admissions?
Okay. So I'll just quickly make a small correction here. So what Ashoka has an aptitude assessment. It's not a test because it's supposed to just assess how you think, what you think, and what you do with the time. A limited amount of time that we give you and how well you engage with that limited amount of time. So yes, the assessment is compulsory. It's a part of your application. So for you to successfully finish your application, you should have done your Ashoka aptitude assessment. And for this round, it will happen on the 23rd of January. The weightage that is given to the assessment is that, there's no, we don't look at a particular parameter in isolation. So what it does to your application is it adds to your application, it supplements your application and gives us one additional parameter through which we could look at your, your sort of critical engagement with concepts, with ideas. And it's a good indicator of also how you do outside of your school, because we know that school learning is a very different sort of a learning. So we would also like to see what you do and how you engage with things that aren't a part of your school. So it's a very conceptual test. So do not be scared. There are sample papers. Do go through the sample papers, and it's designed to be taken with very little preparation. So you don't really have to fret over preparing for the test in advance, for the assessment in advance. And to answer it very briefly, yes, it is compulsory for students to take the assessment.
Thanks for that, Kopal. All right, moving on to the next question we have. What should a recommender include in a letter of recommendation?
All right, I'll take that question. So what we do for recommendation letters, I think I'll briefly talk about the process. When students fill out their application, there is a small section where they can indicate if they would like somebody to fill out a recommendation letter for them. In order for them to do that, there's one thing we recommend very highly, that they get prior consent from the person who they want to write their letter of recommendation. So first of all, you should definitely notify the person who you want to be your recommender, get their consent. The other thing is there will be 2-3 options that you find when you reach that section. So be sure that you fill out their details very accurately, because I don't think you can change that later. So make sure that you have their correct contact details. The other thing is that you can notify your recommender while filling out your application or once you submit your applications. There are 2 options available for you, and the recommender needs to submit their recommendation letter 7 days after the submission deadline. So for instance, if 17th is the submission deadline for round 2, you will have 7 days to turn in your recommendation letter. So now I'll get to the question. which is what does a recommender need to include in the letter itself. So the question that we pose to the recommender is fairly comprehensive. So our general advice would be to engage with the question in its entirety, and the question is designed to know the candidate better, including their areas of strength, areas that have been very helpful for them, but also areas that they could use a little more training in, or areas that they haven't worked very well on, but perhaps they show a lot of potential to do better in that area. So we have noticed that recommenders often write a sort of templatized letter of recommendation where they highlight good things about a candidate. And while we really appreciate that, we'd also like to know some areas that you would like to work on when you move on from school and move into a larger academic space like university. So this is what what our suggestion would be to all the recommenders. And just one other thing that I would like to add. You don't only have to get your principal or teacher to write your letter of recommendation. You could also, approach other people who've been very instrumental for you professionally. So they can also write a recommendation letter for you. This could be a coach, could be a dance teacher, could be anybody who's worked with you in a professional capacity. We can move on, sure.
All right, thank you. All right, so the next question we have is what to fill in level of engagement, school, national, personal, if I have published a book and I want to include that in my extracurriculars?
Okay, so I will take that as well. So, it sort of differs on what sort of engagement you've had while writing your book. A lot of books are self-published. So then I would say that go with putting your level of engagement as practice personal, because it is something that you've done in a very personal capacity. But, if your novel, your short story, your article has been selected for an anthology and published elsewhere, independent of your inputs while the publishing process was happening, then you could select the level that you think would be appropriate for you. And similarly, people also write a lot of blogs. So that could also, I think, operate at a personal practice level. But if your blog is a part of a larger corporation, a larger organization, then you can select whatever seems fit for you.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take the next couple of questions. So one question I have over here is, do all applicants get a personal interview? The answer is no. You have to be shortlisted for the interview, and you get shortlisted on the basis of your application and your assessments. The next question we have is, does Ashoka offer any merit-based scholarship? The answer for that is we only offer a need-based scholarship, and you can apply for a need-based financial aid that we offer once you get a confirmed offer from Ashoka University. Other than these aptitude test. Okay, again, the question says test. I'm going to reiterate what Kopal mentioned earlier. It's an assessment and it's not a test. Do not take it like a test. It's an assessment. So other than this aptitude assessment, we are not needed to give an entrance or the 12th mark sheet. No, there is no entrance, and we can give you a full offer or a confirmed offer even before you get your final 12 board marks, or even before you sit for your final boards. I'll take one more question before I again ask a few questions to the admissions team. What is the application fee? There is no application fee involved at all. The application is free of cost, and it is available on the Ashoka website. There is an apply button on top. You can apply right now as you are listening to this webinar and have a look at it for yourself. All right. So the next question I'm going to ask the admissions team is there any specific age group for undergraduate admissions in which students can apply for Ashoka University?
I'll take this question. It's an interesting one. To be honest, officially, no, there isn't. I mean, we have had students apply to us after a gap year, after several, after, sometimes even having completed an undergraduate degree when they sort of realize that they would want to explore a liberal arts education. Of course, I think that while loosely, we would say, of course, there isn't one, and you should absolutely go ahead and sort of apply no matter what age group you fall in. But I would say that, of course, you must sort of recognize that the larger peer group that you would engage with would be sort of aged anything between 18 to 23 at max. And while the university would, I mean, not particularly, I think, have a problem with it, I think that a lot of learning at an institute like Ashoka is driven by your peers and sort of the engagement that you sort of have, because a lot of the learning is very collaborative and interactive. And it is also a residential university that, while there isn't officially an age group or an age limit or a cutoff of sorts, I think that after a point, this might not maybe be as fruitful for somebody. Then I would recommend that you look at something like the Young India Fellowship Program, which is also also something that it's actually Ashoka's flagship program. So yeah, Kopal, I think that that's mostly it. But if you would like to add anything, please go ahead.
So I think that covers the question, so we can move on.
Okay,
Awesome. All right. So the next question we have again is based on the domicile. What are the benefits for Haryana domicile holders, and does this affect your application?
Yeah, sorry, a few seconds of the first question dropped off, but I think you said, does having Haryana domicile affect your application? Is that the question?
Yep. So the benefits of a Haryana domicile holder, and how does this affect your application?
Okay, so honestly, Ashoka University happens to be in Sonipat and so falls under the, I think, Haryana Private Universities Act. And like most universities that are situated in different states, there are different domicile rules across the country. It has absolutely no bearing on your admission. We sort of ask for it in your application form because it's a data point that we do collect. And at some stage, if you were, of course, to be admitted to Ashoka and you sort of get through on the basis of merit and you happen to be a Haryana domicile, which, as Shaurya sort of spoke about earlier, you have to prove with either the receipt or the actual certification, you are eligible for a 25% waiver on your tuition. So I would say, sure, if you happen to sort of make it through the admissions process and are also HD, there is this benefit. But other than that, it doesn't really translate to anything.
All right. Thank you for that. And the next question we have for the admissions team is, if we don't have exact dates for some non-academic engagements, how do we fill in the duration for that?
I'll take this one. So when people fill out the non-academic activities and engagements section, they'll notice that there are drop-down options in which they can broadly describe the time duration that they've spent on a particular activity. So you don't have to be very exact with your dates. You do not have to mention things very specifically, like 20th March is when you began an activity. We understand that's a very unrealistic expectation, and we don't have that. What we'd like to see in this section is the amount of time you've spent on an activity. So if students do fill out activities like quizzes or dances, we assume that it's not a one-off activity that somebody has participated in. So if somebody is interested in quizzing, we assume that they would have quizzed for a period of time, say half a year, 3 years. So broadly, you can mention the time period that you have done on an spent on an activity in that section.
All right. The next question that we have is, if we don't have certificates for leadership positions, can we submit a scan of a letter from our school counselor as proof?
So yes, I suppose that would work as long as it was on a school letterhead. And I hope that students are not confusing a counselor's letter with a recommendation letter, because these would be two different things. So while we would be very happy to accept a letter from your school counselor, anybody from your school in a position of authority attesting to your participations, we wouldn't be as willing to accept a letter of recommendation as a substitute for another, such document.
Right. So a letter of recommendation is totally separate. This will just be an added proof for the activity that you're doing.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Moving on to the next question. We have, At what stage is the AAA or the Ashoka aptitude assessment conducted? How should we go about it? What's the process? Is there a negative marking in the Ashoka assessment? And will the aptitude assessment be online? And when will we be getting the details regarding it? I'm sorry, Gopal and Janvi, a long question, but yeah, these are the parts. Please let me know if you want me to repeat my question.
Sure, it's not a problem, Shaurya. So I think we've been talking about the Ashoka aptitude assessment for a while, but this is a very comprehensive question, and hopefully it will answer, it will demystify the AAA for everybody who's a part of this webinar. So it's conducted on a particular day for every round. For this round, it will happen on the 23rd of January, and it is a part of your application form. So please do write the AAA, the Ashoka Aptitude Assessment, in order to complete your application. And I also want to stress on the importance of pressing done when you're done with your test, because a lot of students, after they're done with the assessment, don't click on done. So it does not submit. So do click on submit or done once you're done with your assessment. When it's on the 23rd of this month for everybody applying in round 2. The second part of the question was, how should candidates go about it? As we've been seeing, it has been designed to take with minimal preparation. It does not have any negative marking also, so please be at ease. You can look at the sample application forms. It's a very logical assessment test. So, you will have questions which are sort of like complex puzzles. It would assess how you look at verbal problems, how you critically solve a particular statement that's given in your assessment. So this is the thinking skills assessment part of your AAA. The other part would be the on-the-spot essay, in which you will have 2 prompts, and you can choose between the 2 prompts, whichever you feel more comfortable with. You will have 30 minutes to write your essay. It does not have any word limit, so you can write as much as you want or as little as you want. The only suggestion would be that you engage with the prompt to the best of your ability. You read the prompt very well. So that is how you can do both the components of the AAA. And the Ashoka Aptitude Assessment will be online, so you can do it from wherever. The only requirements we ask you to fulfill is have a working laptop or a desktop, to have a working camera, because it's a proctored test. So you will be monitored while you do the assessment. And the other thing is, we obviously recommend that you have a strong internet connection, because it will really help you when you do the assessment. And the time window for this assessment is 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. So you can do it whenever. It just needs, you just need 2 hours to do this assessment. So you can figure out a convenient time for yourself. I hope, Shaurya, I'm answering everything that was asked. And if there's anything else that we've missed out, I can take that up.
Just the last part, that when will the applicants be getting the details regarding the same? So someone who's applying in round 2, when are they to expect the details regarding the same?
Right. So the details will be sent to you around 3 days before the assessment. So 23rd, you can work. By 20th, you will have all the details about your assessment. You will also receive a demo test where you can test your system compatibility. So it's not a part of the assessment. It's just for you to check if your laptop or your desktop is compatible. And if there is any requirement for you to download a special browser in order for you to do the assessment. So these are some things that you will receive in the preparatory email for your assessment.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to ask you one more question before I take up a few more questions. So how holistic is the admissions process? Does Ashoka consider growth if one could not score well in the 11th grade?
Okay, let me take that question. So just a second, my screen seems to have frozen. Could you repeat the question for me again?
Absolutely. So they want to know how holistic is the admissions process? And the second part of that question is, does Ashoka consider growth if one could not score well in their 11th grade?
Okay, I saw that earlier. Okay, so how holistic is the process is honestly a testament to all the things that we have spoken about. I would say the process is entirely holistic just because of the different aspects that it requires you to engage with about yourself. Right off the bat, from the time that you sort of register to apply and fill out the application form. At that stage itself, it sort of asks you to fill out aspects of yourself, I think, that are fairly wide ranging and get you to talk about different things that you've sort of done and engaged with. Then you sort of take into the assessment as well as the on the spot essay, which also looks to sort of look into you through various different lenses. And then, of course, if you do, of course, make it to the interview stage, which is really when we sort of get the opportunity to put a face to your application and have a conversation. That sort of ties all of this together. So I think that basically the process is largely structured in a way where there is no overemphasis on either one aspect of who you really are. Similar to that, I think, just to answer the question, your 11th grade scores are just one of multiple parameters. In fact, in your academic section, if you see, it's 10th and 12th, that's mandatory, and 11th, which is just there, which of course we encourage you and highly recommend that you fill out, because at least from my experience when I was in school, I think the 11th grade is often when you really discover what you're interested in academically, because you're allowed to sort of make a choice for yourself. But we also recognize that things are different in the 11th grade. Sort of the curve is steep. You start studying in a very different way. It's generally advanced, and of course we sort of just generally are aware of the fact that there is a shift post boards and how you sort of look at the 11th and 12th grade. So no, absolutely not. In the same way that the process is extremely holistic and we don't overemphasize on either aspect of the form or your candidature, I would say that your 11th grade, of course, might hold some weight, but it's not, I think, enough at all for you to consider that it would, nullify or not sort of add value to your candidature in any way.
All right. Thanks for that. Okay, I'm going to quickly take up a few more questions, and then I'm going to ask you a few more questions again. So I have a question over here. Due to the online nature of learning, I was not able to connect with my teachers. Is it okay if I don't submit a letter of recommendation? The LOR to the application is not mandatory, but again, it is highly recommended. It adds a lot of value to your application, gives credibility. If you're able to do so, please give an LOR with your application. If not, do not worry. It's not mandatory. You will still be able to submit your application. Do students with a good SAT score get a preference over others who haven't taken the SAT? Absolutely not. The reason why the Ashoka Aptitude Assessment is mandatory is so that we can take the best score between the two. So students who are taking an SAT or an ACT, they still have to give the assessment. They still have to sit for the Ashoka assessment, and the best score between the two will be taken. So no one is at a specific advantage or a disadvantage. Can we apply in multiple rounds of admission? If you get rejected in a round, can you reapply the application again? The short and simple answer is no. You cannot apply in multiple rounds in the same year. You can only apply in any one of the admission rounds, which are any one of the 4 rounds that are there. If you get rejected again, you can only reapply for the next academic cycle, not for the same. Is studying psychology in school required, mandatory for a psychology major at Ashoka? No, there is no requirement for that. Can I pursue a BA psychology at Ashoka, or is it a BSc? It's a BSc in psychology. And if I have any more questions, okay, I'm done with my questions. Okay, again, back to you, Kopal and Janvi. I'll be throwing a few more questions your way. We are expected to enter our predicted score. I'm currently studying in HSC board. Our college does not provide us with predicted scores.
Okay. So I think I will just talk about predicted scores in general and also answer the question. So predicted scores are, I hope everybody knows what predicted scores are. And for those of you who don't know, predicted scores are a reasonable estimation of the scores that you will get when you do your board examinations. So how it works is there are 2 options. You can either predict scores for yourself, or your school or college could predict them for you. And for ISC, for CBSC, for all the state boards, there are these 2 options, where either or. And we understand for a lot of students, schools or colleges do not give out predicted scores. So in this case, what you can do is you can assess the sort of preparation you've done for your board examinations. You can look at your terminal examinations, you can just see how comfortable you are with your curriculum and then arrive at a reasonable score that you think you will get in your board examinations when you finally do them. For international boards, there are two provisions as well. So for them, there is a provision for them they definitely have to self-predict their own scores, but they also have the option to get counselor predicted scores. So for that, what's required is that they should write their counselor's email address very accurately in the box that opens up for them, and the counselor can then send us those scores. However, for ISC and CBSC and state boards, this provision is not available. So for them, if they do want to attach their school or counselor predicted scores, what they can do is that they can get a letter from the school that attests to the fact that these are the predicted scores of a particular candidate, and they can attach that letter as a part of their application. But absolutely no reason to worry. If the school does not have this provision, you can always self-predict their scores.
Awesome. Okay, moving on to the next question. Can you brief about how the interview goes and what is expected out of an applicant?
Sure, I'll take that. And of course, if Gopal wants to sort of add anything to it, she can. Like we sort of touched upon earlier, the point of the interview is really just to sort of add a face to your application form, honestly. By this stage, we've sort of had the chance to read your application form, sort of go over the things that you've engaged with. And it's really a chance for us to sort of sit across from you and have an actual conversation. I would say that you can expect to be asked questions in and around anything that you've written about, because the point of the interview is really to sort of get to know you better and sort of go slightly into more detail about things that you might have written about or been unable to maybe capture in your application form. Um, Ashoka is, of course, a rigorous academic institution, so we will be likely to have a conversation with you about what are your current academic interests. And while we understand that those change and you're not at all required to in any way disclose what it is you intend to study at this stage and stick to it, we would be curious to know just generally what you're thinking about. What is it that sort of brings you to want to be at a liberal arts institution? Why is the style of education something that sort of interested you, and things like that? I think the point really to emphasize is just that we would honestly want to know a little bit more. Maybe if you've had a chance to write about an idea or concept, which is what is questioned in your first essay, we might want to know a little bit more about how you think about that, or a little bit more about the personal experience that you might have been able to write about. And, we might just want to have a conversation and understand, how that translated to the rest of your life, or books you've read, or why you've enjoyed those things like that. So you can largely expect it. I think while it's called an interview and that can seem daunting, it's more like a conversation or a chat where we sort of just maybe get to tie some loose ends that we might have had in our mind when we just read your application form. There was a second part to the question, and sort of what is expected out of the applicant. No, I would just say please be sort of well versed with your application form and the things that you've sort of put into it. And I would say, yeah, just be honest. And you know and I can understand that it's a situation where one could feel nervous, especially now the things are also online. There are all these other anxieties about, like, is my internet going to crash, or like, can you hear me, can you see me, all of that, which I think contributes to the stress in the moment. But I would just say try and be as honest and maybe relaxed and your most authentic self, because that's really what we'd like to know.
All right. Is there a different application for foreign students? I'm not an Indian citizen, but I have done my 10th and 11th grade in India.
I'll take that question. No, there isn't. It's the same application form for anyone and everyone that is interested in being a part of the undergraduate program at Ashoka. There's no distinction at all.
All right. I have done an online course and I have a certificate for that. Will that be counted as an achievement?
I will take that question. So I would say that it's not really an achievement. We don't really look for achievements as such. What we are really interested in are areas that you have very curiously, very authentically, genuinely engaged with. So if you have done an online course, please by all means mention that. And often we come across students who say haven't studied psychology in school, but are interested in the discipline and would have done multiple online courses for that. So when you talk about your non-academic engagements and interests, you can always talk about the fact that you have shown some interest in psychology and substantiate your interest in psychology by telling us about the sorts of engagements you've done. While it could be the online course that we just talked about in the question, it could also be some internships that you've done. You could have assisted people who are psychologists, or we also come across a lot of people who've done the Fortis internship in Delhi and in other cities as well. So if there are these kinds of activities that you've done, you can always write about it. But what I was coming at is, do not write about psychology in 4 sections. It's very easy for you to pick out themes that you would like to highlight. So say psychology is one theme that you want to highlight, so you can definitely do that. But if there are other kinds of courses that you've done, you can also write about them. So try to give us as many insights into your life as you can throughout your application.
All right, thank you. The next question we have is if the National Institute of Open Schooling accepted?
Yes, we do accept the NIOS. And we have a lot of students on campus who've done the NIOS board. And we also, so when you look at the website, you can also look at the various boards that we accept. Obviously, we accept all the more commonly known boards, but a lot of international students have questions about if their particular country's board is accepted at Ashoka or not. While we do accept, I haven't come across any board that we do not accept as of now. But if you want to check the eligibility of your particular board, you can also look at the website, so you can get some more accurate information.
All right. So before we end, we have a couple of more minutes. So do special needs students get some leverage during the admission process?
Kopal, would you like to take it?
No, Janvi, you can go ahead if you want.
Okay, and you add to it if you'd
Yeah,
like.
sure.
In the application form, we do have a section where we ask if there is any kind of accommodations that you would require. So basically, since Ashoka is a residential university, and there's a section where we sort of write about the different centers that are available at the university as well to extend any kind of support that students might need. We do ask in case there are any sort of needs that you might want to highlight, which might lead to you requiring maybe extra time or any kind of special assistance in the process, whether that means that you require a separate kind of tech, or you require a scribe, or you require sort of any, whether it's that you might need a little bit more time, or you need for it to be, scheduled in a different format, things like that. We do offer help. I would just say that in case you do want to avail of this, of course, please be honest and put as much information as you can into the application form, because that's the only way in which we can know more about this. Of course, you can correspond with us in other ways later, but this is the first window into which we will know that you would require this accommodation. So from our perspective, I would say that please try and detail it out as much as you can, so that we're able to extend the best help that is most suitable for you in this regard.
All right. Thank you for that. I'm just going to take a couple of questions myself before we wrap up. So I have a question over here. Does Ashoka offer a 3-year UG or a 4? The answer is we offer a 3-year undergraduate program. You have an option to do the 4th year, which will give you an advanced diploma in postgraduate advanced diploma, basically, a PGD, basically. And also, we have a question, how to prepare for the on-the-spot essays. The links have been provided in your chat box for sample on-the-spot essays and sample aptitude assessment as well. Please go through them pretty much. And let me just see if I have a few more questions before we wrap up. Okay, last question for the admissions team. Do the essays have to be exactly 150 or 400 words, or can they be less? I know it's a question, but if you can just answer that before we wrap up.
So I would say that please make sure that, of course, you do not exceed the word limit in any way. Technically, the form should not allow you to do that anyway, and it won't. But even when you're sort of writing your drafts and things like that, sure, I would say that, to be very honest, I think the word count is thought out very well, because that's honestly, on average, I think how much space you would require to convey something well in the way that it's being asked. Of course, feel free to use sort of less space if you'd like, but and that's absolutely fine if you're able to communicate the same thing in lesser words. That's absolutely not a problem. But of course, in the interest of too much brevity, don't sort of keep too many details from us, because it's not like the word limit is very large, and we would like to know as much as we can, given the small window to read about this. So yeah.
All right. Thank you, Janvi, and thank you, Kopul. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We hope that this webinar was helpful in resolving your doubts related to the Ashoka University application process. We would really appreciate it if you could just take a moment to share your valuable feedback with us. The link to the feedback form is provided in the chat box. Please also note that the recording for this session will be available on Ashoka's YouTube channel in case you would like to share it with your friends. Before we wrap up today, I once again would like to remind our audience that round 2 admissions to Ashoka's UG program, the undergraduate program, are now open. The deadline for this round, the deadline for round 2 is 17th of January. You do not have to wait for your 12 board marks to apply, and you can get a confirmed offer of admission and financial aid without your 12 board marks as early as March 2022, much before your final board exams end. So I know that we are at a time of uncertainty, but something that is certain is this, that we have our timelines fixed. This is an excellent window to apply. So please take the time to start your application if you haven't already, and try and apply before the 17th of January. If you have any further queries regarding various other aspects of the university, you can write to us at ugapply@ashoka.edu.in. You can also call on the contact numbers being displayed on the screen. With this, we come to the end of our session. It was a pleasure to do this with the admissions team. Thank you so much, everyone. Please take care and stay safe. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much, and good night. Bye, everyone.